incarcerated individual at Fulton County Jail. This call is not private. It will be recorded and may be monitored. If you believe this should be a private call, please hang up and follow facility instructions to register this number as a private number. Which thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now. Hello.
I got 1 minute left. Shit, goddamn, if you can take songs, what we gonna do now? You understand? But I'm gonna come
If I can do what now?
If you can take it up, that's wrong. You know what I'm saying? Before you gonna do that, like, on your way to do that?
I don't know. You said like we just got something in the house. I was gonna say, what's going on?
And Your Honor, this is the part that we believe is relevant on this part, which is that he asked the called party to take it up there to him on her way to go do hair. And, Your Honor, we'll stop there. We know that the court's heard a lot of these. The court, we're welcome to play the rest of the court. Would like to hear it.
I'm good.
Okay. And so, at the court of pleasure, I do have argument on those calls that we heard.
All right, okay. Well, go ahead. Let's see your argument.
Okay.
Start out with call number 1.
Your Honor, so what's important here, and this is going, I'll go first with the motion in limine, and then I'll reference it back to the bond hearing. As to the motion in limine, each of these calls is relevant when considered in context with the other calls. So call 1 is when the called party references the fact that basically people came to the house looking for something. Then in the following calls, it details Farley's attempts to hide the item that the officers came looking for. And I think Farley seems to even concede that the item that they were looking for is a phone, because he says, don't turn it on, go throw it away, essentially get rid of it. And he now contends that that's because he was having, outside relationships, but we don't know that, and the jury doesn't know that. That's a matter of interpretation. It's enough to be relevant, and he can argue at trial what he argued here. That's a perfectly acceptable argument, but nevertheless, it doesn't make it not relevant. I think that leads us into 2. It's just where he says all that, and he says it's in the hair box, and he says where to find it, and says not to turn it on. So I think that's enough to be relevant. Relevance is an extremely low bar, Your Honor, and that is enough to be relevant. And there's nothing prejudicial about it. He never says, don't turn the phone on because I'm cheating on you. He just says, don't turn the phone on. It doesn't go into any kind of extramarital affairs or anything like that. He's welcome to interpret that however he'd like to, as is the jury, but it's relevant. It's nevertheless relevant to show that he is, in the state's contention and based off the recording itself, clearly trying to hide something that they, quote unquote, came looking for. As to the third call, I think this is the one that essentially is why the other calls are all relevant. It goes into this third call. In the third call, this is when Farley instructs the called party to give, quote unquote, what they wanted to Farley's father. And another caller then joins the call. Farley discusses the case, and then he instructs the third person added to the call to go to the house and get the stuff. Farley references a gun under his bed. Farley also tells the called party, you know the one, give him that. He repeatedly references what they wanted, and then he references giving all 3 items to his father. Farley instructs the called party to look under the mattress, explaining the one she can keep is under the mattress. That goes back to the gun. Farley also references the phrases, the one I would be riding with, and he says that the item is all the way at the right unless they got it. So he's clearly giving instructions to an item. It would suggest from context clues that that is a gun. Call 2 obviously concerns the phone. We have suggestion from context clues that that's what it means. Finally, in the 4th call, Farley instructs the called party to take the item up there to him, that is to another location. Considered together, this shows that Farley made efforts to hide evidence or items for which law enforcement came to the house looking. The relevant standard, Your Honor, is very low. This is enough to be relevant evidence. It shows that Farley is trying to hide something, arguably a cell phone and a gun. That's what it suggests, at least to my listening of it, and I believe it could certainly suggest that to a jury. I also think his discussion of the case itself is relevant. Obviously, in the first call, the called party, suggests that he cooperate with law enforcement. I think that's all relevant. So first of all, Your Honor, we'd ask that this court deny Farley's motion in limine. As to the bond, it goes back to what I said before. For all the reasons that I stated previously, including that Farley clearly, as Mr. Menendez, we aren't saying he personally is owning a phone right now, but he clearly had access to a phone in the jail based on that photograph. Additionally, Your Honor, he's charged with murder. That is a very serious charge. He was charged with that before he even got these additional RICO charges and the charges of this indictment. Your Honor, and this goes back, I'm sorry, back to point one, he's charged with murder. That was a homicide involving a shooting. So I think the existence of a gun is going to be even more relevant to that. But back to the bond, Your Honor, this is extremely relevant information. The state never lied about the contents of the jail calls. The court just heard them. I think it's clear from the jail calls that Farley did try to hide a phone and a gun from the authorities because he asked if they even referenced if the cops, if they didn't get it when they were there. That was even a reference in there. So I think, Your Honor, that this court properly denied Mr. Farley bond. My understanding is that this case is going to trial within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And so we'd ask that this court continue to deny him bond and to also deny his motion in limine. Thank you.
As for the motion in limine as it relates to the jail calls, the court does find that calls 1, 2, 3, and 4 are in fact probative and relevant, and especially in regards to the potential evidentiary value of what the state demanded in the trial and the conversations and context that may be relevant. Also related to the phone and the gun, there is some evidence to believe that this phone and gun tried to be attempted to be hidden or secreted from the authorities. I do believe that Ms. Rosenwasser had indicated that it would be relevant for the purposes of bond, and for that reason I'm going to deny bond.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May we have a written order on the...
You have to prepare a suitable order on both those matters now.
Yes, Your Honor.